Hi, and welcome to the 2018 Leadership Summit. This session is called Starting Your Year Right. I'm Scott Mobley, the Associate Director of Chapter Operations. The Chapter Operations team is here to serve you all, to make sure that you get the most out of this experience and can make the biggest impact possible on your membership. I want to talk to you today about how to get started on the right foot, and then discuss some general tips that should help you during the course of the year. So let's get started. You may be wondering what's on the agenda, so I'm going to tell you. We already heard our keynote speech and our kickoff message, which were both fantastic. This session is about starting your year right, which is kind of vague, but we'll get into it. After that, we'll get into Star Status, a session with Holly, where she will talk about some sweeping changes to Star Status and Platinum, as well as a brand new set of awards that you'll be excited about. Tara then has a session on conflict management that I think is really important for all of you to hear. Sarah will have a session on signature programs, and we'll talk about the key programs for your year, and then we'll end the day with a session about your brand with Stephen Mandarano, our Director of Marketing, and I think you should be really excited about that. We saved an exciting one for the very end of the day. Starting out on Sunday, tomorrow, we will have Mr. Steve Laughlin, our CEO, with a special message, followed by a session on funds and fundraising with Kevin. And Kevin will highlight the great fundraising ideas he's seen over the years and talk about how to utilize your chapter funds. After that, we have a session on professional development with John Bassford, our COO, that is fantastic. We will move into a 30-minute session on self-care with our partner organization, Active Minds. And I'm really excited about providing this for you all. You're going to get a lot out of it. Next up, we have a session with Susan and Kevin about campus relations, connecting with people on your campus, administrators, leaders, and doing so for both the sake of your chapter and for yourselves. Great stuff. And then second to the last, we have a social media presentation with Maggie. Lots of tips and tricks for enhancing your social media presence, which is really great. And then finally, we'll end with a session about induction ceremonies. It's coming around the bend for most of you. Lots of really good stuff here. And it's brought to you by an officer, our fantastic chapter president at Colorado State, Christina. So lots of good stuff. I'm really excited for this. At the end of each day, we'll have a question and answer session as time permits. But during the day, feel free to use the chat function to ask us questions, and we'll get back to you on the fly. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about a few things. First, who are we and why are we here? I'm not going to get existential with you. I'm strictly talking about NSCS. Expectations. What does being an officer mean, and what do we expect from you? Who you'll talk to and hear from during the year. This has changed somewhat, and I want it to be crystal clear. And we will also talk about who may visit your chapter. Registering on campus. So this is an immediate need that you all should be fully aware of, and it's a top priority as the year begins. Then we'll talk about why calendars are great. In fact, they're more than great, they're the best. And if you don't think they're the best, I hope to change your mind. And of course, there's more, but I ran out of room on the slide, so you'll have to find out what remains later. As we begin, I want to talk about the NSCS stakeholders. Who are the people who make NSCS NSCS? We'll start right at the top. Members. Members are at the top for a reason. They're the people who matter the most, and everything we do is meant to make their NSCS experience better. Officers, this is you. You make the wheels turn at over 300 campuses across the country, and we are incredibly grateful for your dedication. Thank you so much for logging in today, and I hope you get a lot out of this. Advisors, thank you for logging in as well. We are indebted to our advisors who are faculty and staff from our chapters. They take time out of their hectic schedules to support NSCS, and it means a lot. The NLC is the National Leadership Council. It's a group of students who promote NSCS programs, give assistance to your chapters, and give the national office general feedback about how to best serve our members. Alumni. NSCS has a broad network of alumni across the country and who now live around the world. We create opportunities for alumni to connect with one another, and we offer benefits that last a lifetime. Campus officials. We are grateful for the support of people who run your institutions, and we've spent many years building connections with them. We have partners who offer scholarships and discounts and opportunities for our members, and it's a network that's always expanding. The board of directors is made up of people from all across the country, from very diverse backgrounds, and they guide the organization as we navigate an ever-changing world. And finally, the NSCS staff. We work for you, and we want to make sure that all of our members have the opportunity to have life-changing experiences through NSCS. Why are you here? For one, you're here for our members. We rely on you to create opportunities on your campus for members. Part of the value of being an NSCS member lies in the connections that you make and the things that you do as a group. And that falls to the chapter officers to create those experiences. But you're also here for yourselves. And I want you all to remind yourselves that this is a professional development opportunity. Leading meetings, planning induction ceremonies, public speaking, connecting with leaders on your campus, these are things that make for great anecdotal stories during interviews and cover letters. These are things that can impact your development as a professional. During my years at NSCS, I've seen so many times when officers have been able to parlay their NSCS experience into internships, jobs, and graduate programs. So I urge you to keep that in mind as you progress through the year. What do we expect from you? We expect you to act with integrity and be a role model to your members and to your fellow officers. We expect you to follow the guidelines and meet the deadlines that NSCS sets for all chapters. And we have star status and plenty of updates during the course of the year to remind you. We expect you to plan and execute NSCS programs, including induction. We expect you to make star status your guide, and you'll see that it's much improved this year, more on that in the later session. But by following star status, you'll find that things are much easier. And finally, we expect you to stay in touch with your fellow officers, chapter advisors, members, and chapter manager. And we in turn promise to stay in touch with you. Just so you know, my team's goal is to respond to all of your questions within one business day. As an officer, you'll also be expected to know your officer resources. And these are changing and being improved at the moment, so stay tuned. Read the officer handbook when it arrives, and it should arrive in your fall kickoff box if you ordered a box later this month. There will be a digital version as well, but it contains lots of answers to your questions. You should attend as many events as possible, and when you can't attend, always let your chapter president know. If you're a chapter president and you can't attend, make sure to notify the person running the event. And then lastly, recruit and train your incoming officers. Before the school year ends, you're expected to recruit the new board. This is really important and should be taken seriously. So how will we communicate with you during the year? The old way was that you had a chapter manager who was basically your sole contact at NSCS and was the one person that you would hear from. Now you have your one point person, your chapter operations manager, who you will go to with all of your questions. but you'll be hearing from several different people during the course of the year. In addition to your day-to-day conversations with your chapter operations manager and other people, there are 3 great ways to get more information from us. One of them is the Scholar Connection, the bi-weekly newsletter that goes out to all members, and it contains lots of information that you all will find valuable. Next, we have officer updates. Those come out from time to time. They will come from me, and you'll also get some updates from your chapter operations manager. They will be about upcoming deadlines, things that you need to have on your radar. And then we also have officer resources, as has been mentioned, and we're getting a brand new portal soon, but you can find a lot of information in our resources section. There are some nifty guides to a lot of the things that you'll be doing. You can answer a lot of your questions by going to those. So here's our region map. Purple is region 1, which also includes any online institutions. Blue is region 2. Orange is region 3. So each region has a chapter operations manager. You've probably heard from them multiple times already, and you'll be hearing their voices this weekend when they host sessions. The Region 1 manager is Tara Johnson. Tara lives in Rhode Island, and she has been with NSCS for a couple of years, has lots of experience, both from her time here and before. And I think you'll find her to be a really great resource. Region 2's manager is Holly Hankin, who lives in Ohio. Holly is new to NSCS, and she was an officer at the University of Louisville. She was a chapter president there, and that gives her a really great perspective on what it means to be a successful officer. And then Region 3's manager is Maggie Helmus, who lives in DC and works at our national office. And Maggie, like Holly, was a chapter president, and she was a leader at Florida State University. You'll also hear from a few more people, and I've listed 3 here, but it's not that unusual to hear from someone else at some point. First, there's me. I live and work in Colorado. I'll be in communication with you about big picture things, upcoming deadlines and reminders, that sort of thing. I'll also send out surveys from time to time to see how things are going on your end. So when you see those, please respond. They're super helpful. Advisors will hear from Susan Cooper, and officers may at some point as well. Susan lives in DC, or the DC area, and is the primary resource for chapter advisors. She also supervises our Platinum Award process. And I also listed Jen Castillo. So Jen is our scholarships guru. She'll be in touch with you during the year about all things scholarship related. You can connect with her directly about any questions you have regarding scholarships, and I've added her email address here. So while you may be seeing your chapter manager, Susan, or me during the course of the year, you will more likely see a chapter relations manager. So in addition to our chapter operations managers, we have chapter relations managers, and they are our road warriors. Kevin Loader, based in Oregon, and Sarah Lawrence, based in Ohio, will be traveling around the country visiting chapters throughout the year. Sarah and Kevin are both former chapter presidents, Sarah at the University of Toledo and Kevin at the University of Oregon. We may not get to your chapter this year, but we'll do our best. If your chapter is visited, you'll be contacted well in advance, and we'll try to meet with as many of you as possible while we are there. We will set up meetings with your advisor and then work with you to set up meetings with campus leaders as well. And that could include the Dean of Students, the Honors College Director, Student Activities Director, or the like. So if you have an event or a meeting that day, we're happy to join that as well. Keep in mind that your questions should be directed to chapter operations managers who oversee your region, Tara, Holly, or Maggie. So while Kevin and Sarah know a lot about NSCS, and when they're on campus, they're great resources for you, they're almost always on the go. So it's better to ask your questions to your chapter operations manager. So that was a lot. Let's make sense of it. You will hear from several people, but mostly from your chapter operations manager or me. You'll direct questions to your chapter operations manager. If they're out of the office or you can't reach them for some reason, you can always ask me or another chapter manager. And you may be visited this year or you may not, and it could be anyone, but it's likely a chapter relations manager, and they will connect with you in advance of their visit. Now that we've covered all of that, let's dig into registering on campus. This is, as I mentioned, super important. So why is it important? This is how you're officially recognized by your school. So when students want to see if there's an NSCS chapter, they will look on the website. And if you aren't registered as a student organization, you won't be listed. Being official means that you can reserve space on campus, meetings, induction, events, everything. So this is a really big deal. NSCS can invite new members when you're registered as well. We can't say we have a chapter at your school if we don't officially have a chapter at your school. And then lastly, it's a STAR status requirement, October 1st. September 1st is even better. Please look into this now and don't wait until the last minute. I'm going to walk you through what to do, but ask your chapter operations manager if you need help. So what do? First, the first place to go is your student life or student activities website. Sometimes student government, depending on where you are. The website should have all of the information that you need. If not, you should call someone from that office, or better yet, go in person. As I said a moment ago, your chapter operations manager is here to help. So please contact them if you run into delays, issues, or can't figure out how to do this after following these steps. What will you need? You'll need officer names and contact information, generally just email and position. You'll need your advisor's name and contact information. Sometimes you'll need names of your members. Sometimes they'll ask you for like 10 members, or they'll want an entire roster. And your chapter operations manager can help with that. You may need an updated constitution, usually not, but sometimes, again, ask us if you need that. And sometimes there should be a completed training, and that could be one person, it could be two or a couple people, or it may not be a requirement at all. It really depends on where you are. So some things to remember. This is time-sensitive stuff. If you miss the deadline set by your school, it could mean an entire term or year of not being able to book rooms and not being recognized as an official student organization. I'm not going to make a Gen Z joke here, because then you could joke about me being old, but we can't do this via text or Instagram or Snap. Going in person can make this super simple. So don't be afraid to go to the office and ask somebody for help. So by October 1st, you need to provide proof of registration to your chapter operations manager. And this can be a forwarded email or a screenshot. If it's a screenshot from the university website, it needs to say 2018-19. Sometimes the websites are not up to date, which is why we ask for this. Here's a great example from our friends at the University of San Francisco, a fabulous chapter. Last fall, this was what they forwarded to me. And it's an example of what this looks like. Okay, let's get organized and talk about calendars. So why calendars? Calendars send a message to your membership that you are organized and taking things seriously. In the near future, your officers will be able to log into the portal and see a calendar of events, which says a lot about your officer board and how seriously you take all of this. It also minimizes workload and reduces stress. Really through simplification. You won't be doubling up on efforts because of miscommunication. With everything in one place, you can see what's ahead and get the whole year in front of you. And then when members ask you what's coming up, you can always direct them to the portal where they can see the calendar. Why calendars? The other reason is that they help us know what's going on your campus. This is a really great tool for us because it helps us guide our chapter visits, it lets us know when to check in, and it keeps us from constantly asking you what you're up to. Here's a great example of a calendar from last year from the Wildcats down in Tucson, Arizona. They were a bit ahead of the calendar game, and they had their own. Their August calendar is probably empty because it's 1 billion degrees in Tucson and no one's going outside. But you can see that their March calendar was fabulous. I'll let you take a look at that for a minute. That wasn't a minute, but that's okay. Let's talk about what to put on your calendar. So the first thing is plotting out your meetings for the fall, your general body meetings. And here are some tips. Have one location. Try not to bounce around. Make sure it's convenient, like the student union or another common building. Stick to a certain day of the week and a certain time of the day. So for instance, the first Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. Now is a really good time to use a tool like Doodle to find out when members are free in the upcoming term. Plan something unique for each meeting too. This is a great time for professional development, guest speakers, service events, you name it. Do fun things. And when you have food, let them know in advance. Go ahead and schedule your officer meetings now as well. Twice a month is really ideal. Some meet more often than that, but over the years I've seen that chapters who meet less than that tend to struggle. So I say twice a month is great. And in between meetings, use apps or text to communicate with one another as needed. Twice a month, again, is really the sweet spot. Try to schedule them before your general body meetings too, and this saves everybody time. So 30 minutes before, if you have a 7 o'clock meeting, have a 6:30 officer meeting where you all can get on the same page and connect. Most of you should be available, but oftentimes, especially if you have a large board, not everybody is going to make the meeting. So don't let perfect be the enemy of good here. Pick the time when most people are available, and for those who have class or work or something, make sure that somebody follows up with them later to let them know what they missed. Summer is a great time to schedule your events. When we talk about star status later in the weekend, you'll learn that you're expected to have 2 service events and 2 professional development events this fall. These can be part of your meetings or separate, but plan ahead. This is a great time to get these things on the calendar. So now is when I dip into my infinite wisdom on your behalf. Okay, I'm kidding, but I do have some tips for you that I think will help you out as you start the new year. My first tip is get to know your chapter operations managers. I might be a little biased just because I know how great these 3 people are, but I really encourage you to connect with them and listen to their suggestions. They know a lot about what it takes to be an effective officer, and they're just super nice people. So take the time to connect. Get to know your chapter advisor as well. This is a leader on your campus who you can learn a lot from. They are here to support you and to help you have the best experience possible. So get to know them. If you're a chapter president or executive vice president, set up times each term to meet with them in person. Don't let this be a missed opportunity. Listen to one another. There are good ideas all around you. Make sure you find ways to be sure everybody's voice is heard this year. And building on that, remember that this chapter doesn't belong to anyone in particular. It's not the chapter president's chapter or the advisor's chapter or mine or anybody's. Remember to involve everyone. When you're an officer, decisions should be made collectively. And when you elect officers, there should be an election. So make sure that one or two people don't make all of the decisions on behalf of the entire chapter. Next, don't try to do everything. I've seen chapters try to be the best at pace and service and meetings and professional development and social media and socials and everything else. If you're coming off a stellar year and you're aiming big, don't let me get in your way. But for most of us, trying to do everything will result in doing everything marginally well at best. So especially if you're a new chapter or you're rebuilding, use Star Status as your guide. And then think about the things you can realistically do really well. And we'll talk about SMART goals in a later session. Having said that, don't be afraid to try new things. Failure is not your enemy. I've seen some unbelievable chapters who have had events that have flopped seriously. And they've learned from their experiences and were better off because of it. So don't be afraid to try something brand new. We don't find self-improvement through our safe little successes, so be bold. Think about your chapter legacy. Unless you are a brand new chapter, there have been many officers who have come before you and many who will come after you. How are you going to make your mark as an officer board? What will you uphold from the past, and how will you set up future chapters to succeed? Earlier, when I showed you the calendar from the University of Arizona, they mentioned the Masquerade Bowl. And this is a fundraising event that they started years ago and has grown each year. This spring was their 5th event. Think about what you all can start or build upon that might make you more recognizable on campus and last for years to come. It's important that you learn the basics of NSCS. Learn when and where NSCS began, what it stands for, and when your chapter began. Learn about the benefits and the scholarships. Members and potential members will turn to you oftentimes to find out more about NSCS. You are the resident experts. And it doesn't take long to learn enough to be able to talk to people clearly about the organization and about your chapter. If you need help with this, say it with me. Talk to your chapter operations manager. We are here to help you. Okay, this is really important. If you burn out, I want you to speak up because we know that you all are busy. You're high achieving students. A lot of you have jobs in addition to being officers and full-time students, and we get it. If you're overwhelmed or you need help, we rely on you to tell us that. And there's nothing wrong with taking a different role or having a co-chair or even stepping down. The chapter suffers when you don't tell your fellow officers and your chapter manager. So we are really understanding of that, and we know that there are things that come before being an officer. You're not enrolled at your school to be an NSCS officer. It's supplementary. I think it's a really, really powerful experience. But when things aren't going well, please let us know. And lastly, make sure you're having fun and learning. And I've said this to a lot of chapter presidents, but if you aren't enjoying yourself, it means that we're doing something wrong. This should not feel like a job or a chore. It may be stressful at times, like 5 minutes before an induction ceremony begins, and there will be periods of time where it feels like there's lots to do, like during recruitment season in the winter months, but overall it should be enjoyable. And if it's not, let your chapter manager know and we'll figure it out with you. Congratulations, we have reached the end of this session. You don't have to listen to me anymore, but this really is just the start of your race though, as the summer ends. Thank you so much for your dedication to the chapter. I really mean it. We are really grateful that you've logged in today, grateful for your support, and I can't wait to see the amazing things that you do. Thank you.